I don't know if this is not known or what, but this is by far the easiest way to live in Japan as an American. Now, if you're looking as an American to try and live in Japan, the things you'll probably find is the JET program and teaching English. That seems to be the main thing that everyone just talks about. But what makes teaching English in Japan so difficult is, one, you have to find a company that's willing to sponsor you. Two, they usually don't pay a lot. Three, a lot of people are trying to qualify for this. And four, you usually need to have a bachelor's degree of some kind. Usually it's within the field of study like English. And not only that, they want to see that you have maintained a high GPA as well. But after living in Okinawa, Japan now here for 3 years, I can see, specifically for Americans, that there's a really easy way to end up living in Japan. Now, if you've spent time in Okinawa, Japan, you probably already know about this method, but this is for everyone that is American that doesn't know about this, that are looking to move to Japan and looking into the English teaching avenue. This is way easier. Just a disclaimer, by the way, I'm not saying this is like super easy, like it requires no work, but I think it's easier than all the other methods that I've seen. So the easiest way to move to Japan as an American is to get a job with the military. So let me address some questions and concerns that you might have about doing this. Number one, you do not have to join the military. If you've never been to a military base overseas, they're like little miniature cities for the people in the military. These military bases, aka little cities for the American military, have everything that a city would have. A post office, shops, restaurants, stores, and all these places, of course, need people to work there. And these people that are working there are not in the military. They're just regular Americans or Japanese who are working for the military. Now, if you decide to work for one of these places, the restaurant, the store, or whatever on the military base, America will give you what's called SOFA status and sponsor you to live here. So just like a Japanese work visa, you're sponsored to live in Japan. Except you really don't need to deal with the Japanese government because you're being sponsored by America. Because you're being sponsored by America to do jobs for the American military, you do not have to be sponsored through Japan. America will sponsor you. And you also don't need to know Japanese because you're trying to cater to other Americans. And not every job on base, but quite a bit of them are willing to give you this SOFA status. I actually know people here that are just working at Taco Bell or Burger King or Subway on the military base just so they can live in Japan. And just kind of an added bonus, the conversion rate from American dollars to American yen, the dollar is a lot stronger. So right now, I believe the federal minimum wage is $15 an hour. That's what you'll minimally get if you're working on the American military base. In Okinawa, $15 an hour actually goes a really long way, because I think the minimum you can expect to get paid if you just got a job in Okinawa is probably the equivalent to about $7 or $8 US. So it's a lot higher. Plus, Japan's not like America where you have a minimum wage job and you can't live on your own. Here, you can have a minimum wage job and still live on your own. You won't be living lavishly, but there are apartments here that are $300 to $400 a month. Your own place. Now, I ask you, how hard do you think it is to get a job at Taco Bell just so you could live in Japan? Are you willing to do that? Because I would be if I wasn't married and already living here. Now, if you get one of these jobs working with the American military, you will probably most likely end up in a place like Okinawa. I think 90% or 80% or something of the American military bases in Japan are in Okinawa. But I really like Okinawa, and I think you will too, so it's not that big of a deal. Plus, there are bases in Tokyo. If you really wanted to live in Tokyo, you can go and work for the American military there. What do you think of this view behind me? Pretty nice, huh? Not the trucks. By the way, if you want to try and apply for these jobs, I'll link all the websites below. They're all just government websites since you'll be working for the American government. And like any other job, you know, you could work at fast food places, you could work at restaurants that are on the base, you could work at stores that are on the base. So there's a lot of options for you. And again, you don't need anything fancy. You don't need a degree. You could literally work at Taco Bell. I mean, how much requirement is there to work at Taco Bell? Now, because you're working with the American military, you probably will need a clean background check. I'm sure you can't have a criminal record or something. But yeah, overall fairly easy compared to the rest of the methods. And now it's time for the disclaimers. So one negative aspect about this is a lot of these positions, especially especially the ones that don't require anything special. There are specialty positions that do require degrees, and then you could apply for those and work with the American military. And those are the ones that will pay for your moving expenses to move to Japan. So if you're like a specialty, if they need like a health physicist or something in some division, you know, that's the type of thing that they'll pay for all your moving expenses and move you here yourself. With all these other things, a lot of them aren't willing to pay for your move, especially if you're applying for Taco Bell. They're not going to pay for you to move here. They're just going to find someone here. But a little hack for you here. This is not something that they advertise, and I don't think it's something they're really supposed to do, but I've known a lot of people who have done it. You come and visit Japan, just have the intention to move here. Come and visit Japan, apply for all these jobs and positions. You can call them while you're here doing all that stuff. Anyone now can visit Japan for 90 days. They give you a 90 days traveler visa. If you're here already, and then you could come in to like interviews at some of these places, even Taco Bell's, Burger King, stuff like that, they are a lot more willing to hire you. Now, again, I don't think they're supposed to hire people that are here on a traveling visa, but I know a lot of people that have done it. So just saying, if you want to get one of these jobs, maybe just come to Japan, apply for all of them, do a bunch of interviews, and maybe they'll hire you. By the way, guys, if you do plan on visiting Okinawa, Japan, and want someone to show you around, my wife and I and some of my friends are starting a tour company. So we'll pick you up in a car, we'll drive you around, we'll show you all the noteworthy locations, or we can show you anything that you want to see. We'll just talk, hang out, chat, and just explore the island. Wow, this hill is rough. Another disclaimer though I want to say is because you'll have SOFA status, you won't actually be sponsored. I mentioned this before, you won't be sponsored by Japan, you'll be sponsored by America to live in Japan. So what does that mean? What are the differences? Well, there are some limitations in comparison to a Japanese work visa or like a Japanese residential stuff. You'll have to abide by the American rules. American laws are a little bit different. So any SOFA holder status person, I mean, there's simple things like, you know, they sell CBD drinks in Japan and CBD oils and stuff like that, and you can't get those if you're sponsored here by America with SOFA status. You're not allowed to have those even though they're readily available here. There's some other things like you can only own one vehicle. So if you want like 2 or 3 or 4 cars or 2 cars even, you can't. Only one vehicle per SOFA status member. Also, your car will have what's called a Y plate. It'll have a Y on the license plate, and that kind of just shows people that you are working with the American military. There's some limitations to that too. You have to register your car on base. Everything is through the American government. It's kind of like it's registered to America, not necessarily Japan. You're not really supposed to drive cars that aren't Y plates because like insurance differences and stuff, unless somehow they're registered with American person. And then especially during COVID, there was a lot of restrictions for people that were SOFA status members. So there was things like they couldn't go out after 11 or 12 or couldn't eat inside restaurants and stuff like that. America had all these laws basically for COVID, like restrictions, and Japan had none of that. So in Japan, like Japanese people would go out to bars and drink. I mean, it was frowned upon, but there was no restrictions against it, right? But American military or associated people with the military weren't allowed to do it. There is restrictions for being sponsored through America and not being sponsored through Japan. So I can't mention the downsides though without mentioning the benefits. There are, of course, benefits to being sponsored with the American military. For one, you have access to American things. So there's stores and restaurants and stuff like that that are on the military bases that aren't available in Japan. So, you know, if you miss your Flamin' Hot Cheetos or Doritos or something, you can get them on base. Electronics are cheaper on the base or just in America in general versus Japan. So there's some benefits there. Also, restaurants, if you love your Taco Bell or Chili's or Burger King or something, these things are not readily available in Japan, but they are on the military base and you will have access to them, whereas regular Japanese people do not. One of the biggest benefits, also probably the biggest benefit, is you get an American P.O. box. Post office box. So you have an American address, which means you can order from American Amazon and your family and friends in America can send stuff to you as if you were in America. No overseas charges or any extra fees. It's like they're shipping you something in America. I have a lot of family that work for the post office, and at least on the Western coast, one of the main headquarters to send stuff overseas is San Francisco. So when you pay to send something to your friend, at least on the West Coast, and you pay for something to send to your friend overseas, you're really only gonna be paying from the distance from your house to San Francisco. Everything else is kind of free because the military and government taxes and stuff cover it. And the final disclaimer that I want to mention is that I have not done this for myself. I just know a lot of people who have done it, who are here in that way, who get jobs here just to live in Japan. So I'm not claiming to be an expert on this subject, but if you have any questions, or if you know a lot about this and I've missed anything, and you think, you know, I got something totally wrong, leave it, roast me in the comments. Let me know. But in the meantime, I think this is, if you're an American, this is by far the easiest way to end up living in Japan. Literally, if the other options, well, you get married, I guess. That's what I did. Just get married to a Japanese citizen, right? Ha! Yeah, that's so easy. But aside from that, getting a work visa, teaching English, maybe having a bachelor's degree, having good grades, getting over here only to be an English teacher, which is fine, except you'll get paid more on the military base working at Taco Bell than you will an English teacher. I honestly think this is the easiest way for Americans to live in Japan. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you have any interest in Okinawa or Japan and like my personality and stuff like that,